From a studio high above the clouds of the Okanagan Valley, this is the Cannabis Podcast. Exploring the world of Canadian cannabis culture, one toke at a time. Now, here's your host and bud tender, Gary Johnston.
Welcome once again to the Cannabis Podcast. This is episode 177. If you have come back again, thank you so much for doing so. If this is your first visit, well, an especially warm welcome for you. Ahead, we've got 30 or 40 minutes of information about a plant I'm absolutely passionate about, and that, of course, is cannabis. I assume you have some interest as well. Now, before we get too much further, let me remind you, this podcast is intended for those of legal consumption age in your jurisdiction and is intended purely for entertainment and perhaps educational purposes. You should always consume your cannabis responsibly. On episode 177, we're going to talk with Jamie Miller-Haywood about a conversation she had with some candidates running in our BC provincial election. It turns out none of them had any idea there were problems in the cannabis space. We look at a new organization seeking better standards for cannabis testing. A new study looks to produce fruitier smelling cannabis. And I share my recent dry herb vaporizer upgrade. Can you say mighty? On Cultivar Corner, we're trying something new and currently very limited access to from Saltspring Magic, Magi's Legacy, Moby Dick. All of that and more on episode 177 of the Cannabis Podcast. And of course, before we get too much further, I want to thank you for being here. I always appreciate the fact that you come by to listen to the Cannabis Podcast. I truly do. And I also want to thank my supporters at buymeacoffee.com/Cannabis Podcast. Thanks to Jordana. And also thanks to Tony, who bought me another doobie. You can go to that same place, buymeacoffee.com/Cannabis Podcast, if you like what you hear and you feel so inclined. And I want to thank my patrons at Patreon. Thanks, Tony, Rob, Gage, Lloyd, and Roger. I thank each and every one of you so much for your support. And now, let's get to our first story. So we've spoken to her before, you've heard her voice before, and it is my pleasure to welcome Jamie Miller-Haywood back to the Cannabis Podcast. Thanks for joining me, Jamie. How are you today?
I'm good, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And I hear you have been busy down in the South Okanagan, so let's set it up. For those who don't know, BC is in the middle of a provincial election. October 19th is our election day. And we're trying to get people interested about the cannabis world and what they're going to do for it. So tell me, Jamie, what have you been up to?
Well, I've gathered a group of micro cultivators and retailers from our Penticton Summerland riding. We've joined forces and have approached a few of the local candidates. We've had the BC NDP, Conservative, and 2 independents who responded to our request to meet. We invited them to the Pure Fire facility, which is right in Penticton, so central to our riding. And we've had about an hour and a half discussion with each candidate, and then we would take them for a tour of the facility. All of them have never been in a grow facility before, so that was a really unique experience. The response from all of the potential politicians has been surprisingly the same. Completely uneducated. All of them have come into those meetings knowing absolutely nothing about cannabis or the industry, and every single one of them have left in agreement that our industry is in really big trouble.
Well, you're getting that message out. That's good.
Yes. Yeah.
And it sounds like they're hearing your message.
They are hearing our message. Being right across the table from them has been really important, rather than just emails or phone calls or social media grievances, I guess. They're actually hearing us. We came with our numbers. We put a full agenda together that we sent off to them ahead of time so that they kind of have some idea of what the conversations are going to be. And they have been absolutely floored with how disastrous the industry is. The taxation is far beyond what anybody expected it was going to be in the beginning. And they're really surprised that producers and retailers have been able to survive this far. They're floored.
And that's the thing that I have found anytime you do have a talk with a politician, they are so literally unaware of what's actually happening in the industry. And I'm glad you've had that opportunity. So give me a sample of some of the things you talked about and what their reactions were.
The taxation is the biggest one. We came presenting numbers from Pure Fire, and the tax that they have submitted, that they've remitted, far outperforms their actual revenue. So the government is getting like 1,000% taxes on the revenue that a family is producing. And then once we take the candidates into the facility to see how big or not very big the floor space is, for lack of a better word, they're surprised that they're able to pull in so much tax revenue and not really have very much for their own business growth in the end on such a small floor space. It's mind-boggling. And so we've also presented that if even half of that tax comes back to the producers, they would be able to employ 5 more people with well-paying jobs, not just minimum wage paying jobs. These are well-paying jobs that are sustainable for life in the South Okanagan, which is extremely expensive, as it is all across BC right now. It's been very enlightening. It's been enlightening for us because now we really do know that nobody in the political space knows anything about the cannabis industry. And it's been enlightening for the candidates because now they can see what good tax-paying people are up against. And Tina Lee from the NDP in our riding asked a very important question. And she said, what is the viability of the industry in 5 years if things remain the same? And immediately, Dina from Pure Fire said there isn't going to be one because it's not viable.
That's right. 5 years from now, if we're still trying to play the same game, we won't be playing it any longer.
No, and the consequences of the entire industry collapsing are quite dramatic. The consumers aren't going to stop consuming. They're just going to go to the unlicensed product. And then there's no Health Canada checks and balances. There's the buyer beware thing that we all have to be concerned about. And, you know, a lot of people worked really hard and spent their entire life savings trying to pull this into the legal realm, and to be overtaxed to the point of complete destruction is just not an option.
No, it's not. And I mean, we've been talking about this for 6 years now. And we've been musing about the fact that somebody has to do something about the taxes. We can clearly see that there is a difference and something has to happen. Do you think the candidates that you spoke with are going to take this forward? Do you think they're actually going to do anything with it?
Yes, I do. Honestly, all of them. I believe both the NDP and the Conservative candidates were very motivated. They've got their parties behind them. And then we spoke to 2 independents that also expressed very big concern, very willing to put forward private members' bills to champion our case. We didn't hear back from the Green Party representative, so I'm not sure how they stand on it, but one of the candidates suggested that we should pursue a bailout, for lack of a better word, just like what the BC tree fruits industry is getting and the wine industry is getting. And they were very willing to champion that cause if they are successful in their bid.
It is so disappointing to see our country in this situation where we had such an opportunity to do legal cannabis right. And boy, we have failed in that regard.
Especially in BC, because in BC, we've had the culture for generations. It was ours to lose, and we lost it right off the hop without even having an opportunity to get success. It was the taxes absolutely pulled the rug out from underneath us, and it's been impossible to catch up.
Well, that's not terribly great news, but it is nice that you connected with some politicians that have now realized that the industry is in trouble. If we can all get that message out more to all of the people in our world, maybe we can still make some change, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really important for your listeners to take the ambition, or to have the ambition to go forward and reach out to your MLAs, even if it is just an email or a phone call every once in a while. Just check in with them and let them know that you are engaged in the political arena, and that you demand change. It's important to get down on the MLA level because they'll be our champions in Victoria. We didn't meet with anybody that was against the cannabis industry, and the MLA that is in the seat right now is retiring. He was a Liberal that became a BC United, And we've had people from our industry try to reach out to him for 5 years, and he has completely ignored every single request to meet. Email, phone call, in person, nothing. He was invited to events, nothing. He had wanted absolutely nothing to do with the cannabis industry. And now we've got 4 people that are vying for his seat that are extremely motivated.
Well, that would sure be nice to see that flip and to have this now go the other way, where we have politicians who are coming to the fore and are championing it and getting that message out. And maybe we can see some change.
It would be nice. It would be nice because we don't have an option. If we don't see any change, our entire industry will collapse. And the gravity of having an entire industry collapse is massive. Because in BC, the cannabis industry is outperforming when it comes to jobs, and it's also outperforming against the wine industry as well, which is a huge economic boom in our valley, as you know, in the Okanagan. Alcohol sales, and this was on the, I believe on the LDB website that I saw this, or on StratCan, alcohol sales are down 0.7% in the 23-24 fiscal year, and cannabis sales are up 27%.
Yeah, we've surpassed it now. Yeah.
Exactly. Our industry is outperforming the alcohol industry. Consumer spending is changing when it comes to health, also has a big role to play in how people are spending their money. We have a huge opportunity for tourism, especially like in the Okanagan and on the island and things like that. And none of those opportunities are going to be realized until taxation is fixed.
We have to fix that so that the companies have a chance to operate and to make some changes. Well, thanks for sharing the news, Jamie. I'm glad that you were involved in a group and you're getting out there and having some of that exposure. Any suggestions for others? You've already suggested that, we need to be involved. Talk to your MLA.
I can't stress it enough that we are never going to be able to opt out of paying taxes, whether that's on a business level or a personal level. We're never going to have that opportunity to opt out. And so we have to make the politicians work for us, because essentially we are hiring them to work for us. We pay them our paychecks. They need to work for us. Most of the politicians that I've come across are actually really good people on a personal level, and they just don't know what they don't know. So it's going to have to be up to us to educate them on how this is all playing out. So I can't stress it enough for your listeners to get involved in whatever capacity works for you. But it has to be something, they have to hear us, and it's going to have to be the whole industry rising up, not just a few select co-ops and lobby groups. It's going to have to be everybody.
Well, let's hope we can achieve that and we can start to change some of these wheels and have them turning the other direction so we start to make some progress.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks so much for the information, Jamie, and lovely to see you again. Lovely to talk to you again.
You too, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
I realize that the conversation that you just heard was perhaps not as upbeat as you were hoping for, but I think it's a conversation that has to happen, and especially as elections are about to take place across our country. I urge you, if you are living in a province in Canada where there is an election going on, don't ignore it. Get out there and vote. I don't care who you vote for, but I do care that you vote, because I think it's something that we as citizens should encourage each other to do. It makes us a better society. At least that's what we hope. So that's my encouragement. Again, I don't care who you vote for, but when Election Day rolls around in your area, get out there and vote and make your voice heard.
From the cannabis-infused studio in the clouds, this is the Cannabis Podcast.
I wanted to comment on something that I was asked a little while ago. I had listener Will contact me and had some questions about vaporizers. And I think I mentioned this before, that he asked when I made the switch from the Crafty to the Arizer. It wasn't a tangible decision. I didn't make a decision as opposed to what I'm doing today. And then he said, do you have any recommendations to improve the flavor for dry herb vaping? I find the flower that I'm using all kind of taste the same, and I have trouble picking up the distinct flavor notes. I'd appreciate some guidance or would love to hear an episode more about dry herb vaping and developing vapor profiles. Well, here we go. This was a week where I was getting ready to do some more Cultivar Corners and wanting to kind of step that game up a little bit. I realized that my use of the Arizer Air Max was not giving me the detail that I needed. I appreciate that Arizer sent me the Air Max so that I could see whether it would work or not, and it has some possibilities. I've already expressed that I didn't really like the glass bowl. I burned my fingers on that a whole bunch of times. So I made a decision yesterday, and in typical fashion, where I will do a bit of research, trying to anticipate kind of what I'm after. And then I see a component that I've seen before, and I say, okay, that's it. I'm just going back to it. So what I went back to is the Storz & Bickel Mighty. Now, I did have the Crafty for a couple of years. I was using that on early Cultivar Corners. And back, I think, when we called it Strain Review as well. I was using the Crafty, which was a nice little bonus. But I also found the Crafty didn't quite deliver everything that I was looking for. And that's why I kind of went down that path of looking for some other options. And then, of course, the Crafty just stopped working for me. I tend to use machines so much that I wear out all of their internal components. So here we are. I made another decision. I've gone back to the Mighty. The Mighty Plus, in fact, from Storz & Bickel. The last Mighty I had, I used it up until it burned it to the ground. And I loved every minute of it. I used to take it everywhere. And I used to do most of my smoking in it. So I think we're going to see that change again. To the point that you were looking for, Will, playing with those vapor profiles means that you're changing the different temperatures. You're taking some research and you're finding out that, for example, if I've got one that says it's coming in at 420 degrees Fahrenheit or 380, then we're going to adjust our temperature down to that. The Mighty adjusts temperatures all the way through. So really a lot of variety, a lot of possibilities. And here's the thing, as soon as I put my lips to the Mighty one more time, and I turned it on, I had some air blowing across that cannabis, and there was a lot of air. And that's the thing I missed. In both the fact of the Crafty and in the Air Max, there wasn't a lot of airflow. I really struggled to get a good hit and feel all of the components of that hit. Well, with the Mighty, those days those concerns are out the door. I don't know how they do it. It's a fairly short path from the part of where the cannabis is sitting and the air, and it's a combination conduction convection oven, and it is now ceramic coated. And where that sits, and as the air blows across it, releasing all of that fabulous vapor, and it's a really good airflow. Get a nice, good, filled up lungs, and as a result, the hits work pretty well. So I have a sneaking suspicion as I do Cultivar Corners for the next little while, it may hit, in fact, a bit harder than it has because I'm getting a really good hit out of the Mighty and I'm getting all of those cannabinoid components out of that vapor. I made the switch. I have made the decision to go forth. If you have some suggestions of some other ones that you would like to hear about, let me know, and maybe I can get a copy of one of those and we can take a peek and do some comparisons. But for now, my dry herb vaporizer, just for dry herbs. And here's the other component that I really like about it that I had forgotten about with Storz & Bickel. So they now have what they're calling dosing capsules. Now, they've had these for a few years, and I think this is a really cool way of not really controlling, but providing a bit more access and control to the weed you're smoking. So they have these little anodized silver dosing capsules that hold, I've tried to weigh it out. I think it could be up to about a half a gram, perhaps a little less than that. And the idea is that you can stack up a whole bunch of these and store them up. And if you're heading out somewhere, just stick them in your pocket or stick them in the case and drop them in as you need it. And each one of these dosing capsules is going to be a significant amount of hit. So enough to get some endocannabinoid exposure. So I tried that out yesterday. The other advantage of using the dosing capsules is it keeps the component of the Mighty a little cleaner because you're not putting all the cannabis inside of that. So that's another thing I'm trying out. I'll give you some more ideas on that as we go along. So the change has been made. We've dropped the Air Max. Thank you for the use. I really appreciate the fact that we had it. But I needed to step up my game so that I can get a little bit more vapor and give a sense of what you and where you can get some more vapor. So we're ready, one toke at a time.
THC, CBD, terpene profiles, what's in me? Oh, please explain to me. Cultivar Corner, Cultivar Corner, oh yeah. Cultivar Corner, please explain this stuff to me.
Welcome to Cultivar Corner, brought to you by Up & Smoke at 258 West Broadway in Vancouver and online at itsupandsmoke.com. Check them out today for some direct delivery exclusives like we're sampling today, which is Magi Moby Dick. This is exclusive to Direct Delivery Channel, and lucky for you, you can see it if you go to itsupandsmoke.com. You're of legal age and you live in BC, you can check it out for yourself. In fact, you can have it sent to you. I forgot about the mosaic of Canada, though. If you live in another province, you're going to have to speak to your MP. Now, the other thing about things coming through the Direct Delivery Channel is we're going to get access to stuff that we couldn't get access to before. And it's pretty rare access. Now, this is a pretty good example. So this is Saltspring Magic, grown on Saltspring Island by the Magi. This is Magi's Legacy, Moby Dick. I got 7 grams of it through direct delivery, and 23.4% is my THC, and that's all the information I have. Because this was a limited run, they put out through direct delivery to see how well it did. It's done really well. So I have heard from the folks at Saltspring Magi that they are going to come forth with this one. And when they do, of course, we'll have the full rundown. Let's get my weight, get my scale. Let's make sure that we are on. When I'm buying 7 grams, I always like to check. I guess I check with every purchase I make. It doesn't matter whether it's 7 grams or not. And let's see what we got from the Magi's Legacy. Oh my goodness, this stuff is sticky. This is fun so far. Oh, and I love that too. Look at that, 7.15, so it's a little bit overweight as well. And still a little bit more in that. I can even pick up a little bit more. Look at that, 7.16 is what I've got in that jar. I'm using some information that I've kind of accumulated from a couple of different sources. So Moby Dick is a sativa indica ratio of about 75-25 split in terms of the hybrid. It's a crossing of White Widow and G13 haze. These heavy sativa genes create a strongly euphoric creative high with an upbeat mood. The dominant smell and flavor when smoking Moby Dick is sweet, citrusy turpentine with 1.3% terpinolene. Now, terpinolene, interesting terpene. As I was taking a peek at this, as I pulled open I opened the bag, I put it into a jar where I like to keep things. So this is what I'm getting out of my Moby Dick this morning. Oh, just an amazingly unique aroma. And that's one of the things I think that is truly unique about this, is because it seems that terpinolene is the most dominant terpene, it's creating a really unique profile. And when I first started trying to figure out what was inside of this, because of the candy notes, I was convinced that there was some farnesene in it. But then I realized that, in fact, terpinolene can trick you. Terpinolene can be a number of different things. Terpinolene can give you some sweet. It can give you some spicy. Really an interesting terpene. And it certainly adds to the aromas of Moby Dick. Oh, just beautiful. Let me pull out one of those buds. We'll take a look through the jeweler's loop and see what we got with our Moby Dick. And here we go. Oh, my. I just love it when I pull up the jeweler's loop, and all I can see are trichomes. My vision is blinded by the amount of trichomes that are in this. Really nicely handcrafted. I'm not surprised by that. Everything we've so far have seen from the Magi has been beautifully crafted. That is excellently trimmed. This is some sticky weed too. As I'm grinding it up to put it into my grinder, it is just getting stickier and stickier. Oh, I just love the smell of it. What is the smell? There seems to be almost some perfume. You can pick this up through direct delivery at itsupandsmoke.com, provided you live in BC and you're 19 years of old. 19 years of old? Hey, it's early in the morning. Sometimes I just don't speak well first thing in the morning. It has nothing to do with whether I'm high or not. And so we're going to try this out in the new vaporizer. picked up the Mighty, and lovely to have it. Really excited about bringing that into the Cultivar Corner realm. Lots of flavor, lots of vapor that comes out of that. Got myself a nice little joint ready to go too. I think it's time. And because this is leaning to a sativa, about 75% on the hybrid side of things, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a buzzy day. And let's see what other information I can pull up on this one. So I picked up some info from Leafly. Consumers say this strain makes them feel buzzy with a motivating head high. And THC at 24.3% makes it a good choice for new and experienced cannabis consumers. Let's have a taste. This is from Saltspring Magic, Magi's Legacy. This is Moby Dick. We'll try it in the joint first. Oh, that's nice and smooth. Oh, very, very nice. Easy on the throat. Lovely taste. Picking up there's a whole bunch of mix of different flavors inside of this. And I'm not quite sure exactly what they are. Oh, very nice. Yeah, I like that. Let me get my Mighty up to temperature, and it'll be ready when it's time to take a toke out of that. So again, I am looking for some sativa experience today. And of course, remember, if you want to pick up some of this yourself, you can go to itsupandsmoke.com. If you live in BC, that's a possibility. Oh, that is really nice. And I'm starting to get a little buzz. Starting to get some happy eyes that are kind of rolling on in here, which of course is always nice. I always like it when the happy eyes show up. And now my Mighty vaporizer is ready to rock, and I'm rolling this at a slightly lower temperature. I'm running this at 172 degrees, so I get the flavors, but I'm not getting any of the burn. So this is Moby Dick from Saltspring Magic, and what it's like through the vaporizer. Oh yeah. That's really nice. So I'm getting a sense of some candy notes in that, which I think is coming from the terpinolene. Oh, and it sits on a really nice foundation of just some really nice smelling weed. And you know, when you stick your nose in a jar of weed and you love the smell of it, that's probably some weed that's going to make you feel pretty good. And that is the case with the Saltspring Magic, Magi's Legacy Moby Dick. Oh, yeah. Oh, and here they come. Here come the happy eyes. I'm always so enamored when they start to show up. Oh, really nice. So the flower, you're going to absolutely love the look of the flower. And as we have been told by the folks at Saltspring Magi, this is coming to the real world. They did a really small run, and this came out through direct delivery. That's when Matt and the folks at Up in Smoke picked it up. That's why we have access to it. That's why you can go get access to it now as well. Oh, it's that dominant smell, and that's where I'm thinking it's the terpinolene. Oh, that's really nice. And really buzzy. Now, I did pick up somewhere that someone said after about an hour from those sativa effects, it kind of rolls into a bit of an indica, that 25% piece coming in. And that's kind of to be expected. Let's take another hit off the vaporizer. Oh, that is so sweet. Oh, I love the taste of that. So smooth. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, and there they are. and my happy eyes have burst forth. I am feeling lots of euphoria right now, and that's what I figured this was going to be. Really buzzy and motivating head high. Lots of energy from that perspective. I feel like I could just get out and go golf 72 holes. Well, maybe not 72. Maybe we'll go 36. But regardless of that, it's feeling really good. Hasn't moved into any body stone yet. It's still mostly up in my head. Lots of euphoria. Lots of lovely effects that are happening to me right now. Really enjoying this. Lovely that we got our hands on it. Lovely that this is now going to come out with a full, what do we call it? A full exposure, a full release, I guess, when we do Moby Dick and we do a full run of it. This was a small, limited run, very successful, pretty tasty, pretty enjoyable. So we are now informed that a full run is on the way. So we're looking forward to that too. I love my job. This is such a fun part of putting the podcast together for me. I just love doing Cultivar Corner and sharing my experiences with you. And once again, this has been a pretty good experience. This is from Saltspring Magic, Saltspring Magi, Magi's Legacy, Moby Dick, 7 grams of it. If you are in BC and you're 19 years old, you can go to itsupinsmoke.com, check it out on their menu, have it sent to you, and you can try some for yourself. And I don't think you'll be disappointed. This is going to be a fun day.
Sharing stories about good weed while trying good weed. This is the Cannabis Podcast.
Go to stratcan.com for the next story. This was written by staff. A new organization that hopes to help establish standards-based information about cannabis products and companies in Canada is hosting its first workshop in Ottawa in September. The Cannabis Standards Alliance of Canada is a newly launched not-for-profit organization seeking to establish enforceable industry standards and provide consumers and industry with evidence-based information about cannabis products. In their first workshop on September 20th, the new association focused on the accuracy of THC values on dried cannabis flower products. The goal of the workshop was to create standards for sampling practices by producers and analytical labs for testing purposes, such as sample selection and preparation. The CSAC provides the cannabis sector with an alternative to lab shopping THC inflation, creating a level playing field for producers, labs, and dispensaries of all sizes, said Pierre Killeen, the organization's executive director, in a press release. Going forward, the Cannabis Standards Alliance of Canada will develop additional enforceable standards, helping the sector capitalize on the many opportunities of legal cannabis, both here in Canada and internationally. Killian has an extensive history in policy and public affairs, and was most recently the executive director of the Institute on Cannabis and the VP of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs at the Cannabis Council of Canada. Before that, he was VP of Corporate Communication and Government Relations at Hexo, a Quebec-based cannabis producer. Issues with the accuracy of THC testing have been a hot topic in the cannabis industry in Canada and beyond. The Ontario Cannabis Store even began conducting internal testing on products it carries to ensure THC levels are accurate. In 2023, Health Canada also announced it was launching a data gathering program on cannabis markets in Canada that will include sampling and testing of both legal and illegal products currently in the market. And there's an interesting story from StratCan, hoping to offer up some better standards for cannabis testing. The improvement is always something we're looking for. This story, written by David Brown, comes from stratcan.com. The University of British Columbia, UBC, has received a grant to help improve the breeding of more fruity-smelling cannabis. The $500,000 grant provided by Genome British Columbia, Genome BC, was announced by Aurora Cannabis, which says the project, Genomics-Enabled Aroma Breeding in Cannabis, will directly support the company's genetics work around cannabis. The project is led by Dr. Jose Saleda, Principal Scientist, Breeder and Genetics at Aurora, and Dr. Jorg Bollman, a professor at UBC, focusing on validating genetic and chemical markers for fruity aroma in cannabis. Through this work, Aurora will deepen our understanding of cannabis genetics with a focus on aromas, a leading driver of consumer preference that directly impacts the user experience, said Dr. Jose Celadon, Director, Breeding and Genetics at Aurora. By collaborating with UBC on this Genome BC-funded project, we were able to fully execute this aroma research without the typical financial constraints, allowing us to continue simultaneous work on additional important breeding traits, such as yield, potency, and disease resistance. We are eager to see the outcomes of our work and the impact on the future of cannabis breeding. Aurora has been collaborating with researchers at UBC for several years. In 2023, Aurora announced they were teaming up with a UBC researcher to create cannabis more adapted for outdoor production in Canada. The company's breeding program and cannabis breeding facility, OCO, is in collaboration with an adjunct professor from UBC. Aurora recently planted a series of genetic and chemical markers for fruity aroma, which were identified through its CAN-D diversity panel. This new collaboration, says the cannabis company, will allow Aurora to validate these markers using cutting-edge approaches that would otherwise require significant funding. The data generated from this work will support the discovery and launch of cultivars with unique and improved aromas alongside high yield and potency. Aurora's in-kind contributions to the project include conducting sensory analysis of fruity aromas and leading bioinformatic analysis with in-house software. UBC's contributions to the project through Genome BC funding will involve sequencing transcriptomes, analyzing the volatile chemistry, and conducting functional characterization of the genes responsible for fruity aromas in cannabis. If successful, Aurora hopes the methods developed in this project can then be adapted to explore other aromas, strengthening the publicly traded cannabis company's aroma-related intellectual property profile. Genome BC is a not-for-profit organization that has helped conduct genomics research and innovation for nearly 25 years. Genome BC has attracted over $1 billion in direct co-investment to the province, which has contributed to funding more than 550 genomics research and innovation projects. In 2020, Genome BC announced a $4.3 million project to breed powdery mildew-resistant cannabis cultivars. And there's some interesting information from Strachan about a combined project with Genome BC, Aurora, and UBC looking for more fruity cannabis, and we all know how popular that is. I can't believe we did it. I guess it's not too difficult. We start the ball rolling and it just comes up to the end, and we have reached that conclusion. Appreciate you being here so much. Let's end with a couple of chuckles, shall we? This again coming to us from a site called naturallyfunny.com, their marijuana joke section, and they've got a ton of them. I told my friend I wanted to become a cannabis farmer, and he said, "Well, that's a bountiful career choice. If you're dating someone who doesn't like marijuana, just roll with it." Why did the Stoner chef get fired? They couldn't stop adding extra herbs to the dishes. I asked my friend if he had any marijuana jokes, and he replied, "I'm not high enough to think of any." And we'll end on that note. Again, if you ever have any comments on anything you hear on the Cannabis Podcast, please send a note to info@cannabispodcast.com. Thank you so much for being here. And from the guy in the clouds, that's it for episode 177 of the Cannabis Podcast.
From the cannabis-infused studio, high above the Okanagan Valley, this was the Cannabis Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to podconnects.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Season 1 of Dope History is now available at dopehistory.com. Dope History weaves you through the lives of those who have been touched by cannabis or have had an influence on the events that shaped our laws or relationships with this plant. You'll hear tales from Frenchie Cannoli, Keith Strop, Eddie Lepp, Tom Alexander, Ed Rosenthal, Wolf Seagal, Jorge Cervantes, and Tommy Chong. Available now at dopehistory.com.